Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stoliarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our U.S. Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon of Sunday, April 6th, 2025. Today we have a fascinating discussion in store for you on a pioneering new longevity and rejuvenation treatment, the Rejuvacyte procedure from Austin Biotec. I would like to first introduce our distinguished panel today. We have joining us two of our U.S. Transhumanist Party officers, Ramon Garcia, our Director of Visual Art, and our Director of Publication, Zack Richardson. And we have several distinguished guests on our panel today. We have Dr. Aubrey de Grey, who is the founder and president and chief science officer of LEVF, the Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation. And we have Dr. Jose Cordero, who is our technology advisor and foreign ambassador in Spain. Our two guests of honor today are Elaine Walker and Zack Varkaris. Now, Elaine Walker is a remarkable individual. She has written a book called Matter Over Mind. She is a musician. She has composed a lot of very interesting microtonal and I would say futuristic music. She has a mathematics background and a long-standing interest in space exploration, which is also a subject that we hope to discuss later in this salon. And Zack Varkaris is a returning guest who will be familiar to many of our viewers. He is the founder of Austin Biotec, and he has been on this quest for the past several years to bring these rejuvenation treatments to women and also promote their longevity and health. So welcome, Elaine and Zack. Thank you for joining us today. And Elaine, you have recently been a patient of the Rejuvacyte procedure. So please tell us your story.
Hi. Yeah, so I will go through the whole thing. I have been documenting it just on, my cell phone here and there. Whenever I feel like it, I've been, I know that they really wanted to start getting the women to show their story and what it's really actually like, because Zach's really just been getting out there and talking about the science, but what is it really like to do this? And so I put together a 10-minute video, poorly edited 10-minute video. So why don't we watch that first, and then I'll kind of set the scene, and then I'll. Okay, I'm expecting the phlebotomist to show up any minute now. And this really kicks it off and makes it official, I think, because, can't turn back now. And let's see, tomorrow I'm getting a bone density scan and some other stuff and some labs. So I'll document that too. Doorbell.
Document your journey.
I'm getting my blood drawn for the centrifuge. 52 mLs.
Okay, Mama. I'm gonna have you stretch out your arm, okay?
Okay.
You need to clean the surface. Sorry. You feel okay?
Oh, you did it already?
Yes.
Oh, I had my eyes closed. I didn't even notice. Wow, you're good. Holy blood. Okay, so the countdown has officially started. today I'm on my way to get 2 scans. One is a bone density scan called a DEXA scan, and the other one is an ultrasound down there. Kitty, you have the life. You never have to run around and do things. I can't even tell that you're a cat. I got here a little early, so I can finish drinking my 4 cups of water and listen to Chris the Brain while I drink. Cheers.
We call photons entangled when their polarization is correlated.
People go, oh. Phew, 1, 2, done. Okay, so I need to document what I look like before stem cell therapy. So this is with no makeup. I have a tiny bit of mascara on because I went out to get my scans. But, so yeah. So my hair is pretty gray. I grew it out so that we'd be able to tell the difference. I was born and raised blonde, and then it got darker a little bit. As soon as I got 1 ash blonde hair in middle school, I started lightening my hair, bleaching it, so it's a little fried. So it'd be great if some of the volume comes back, and moisture, and color. I do miss the 80s blonde jokes, I have to admit. We got so much attention back then. Look at my vertical keyboard. He wants to go to space. And there's my Pluto tar. I made this in honor of Neil deGrasse Tyson, and because I knew that he would be able to see one of my performances I was doing. It was hilarious. I called him out. Okay, I'm going to show you my morning routine. So my alarm goes off. I put it on snooze, and I either get into a child's pose, ballet stretch, or this stretch. And then I just wait for my snooze to go off again. And then when it's really time to get up, I do this. I'm gonna slide off my bed. Before I do that though, I always do these neck lifts because I need to keep my neck strong for grappling, or it also helps lift your neck if you exercise it. And then I slide off the bed. I had a back injury in 1980, so this really helps me keep it stretched out. Hang out here a little bit. And then I always need to kind of stretch back this way. This looks like yoga, but I don't know anything about yoga. Kitty, get on camera. I'm gonna sit on you. 3. If I can do 5, that's pretty good. Because it's not really morning exercise per se, it's just getting my blood flowing. Just getting in the mood to be up, because I love sleeping. I love being in bed. Okay, Austin Biotec has us also do exercise to fill in whatever we're not doing enough of in our daily lives. So since I go to Kickbox Fitness Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and at the time I started this, I was lucky if I made it even 3 days a week. So they give us a plan called the Hugs Plan, and I'm going to take you through it. I'm not going to do the whole half-hour routine, but I'll show all the exercises. So there's a warm-up, 2 sets, and then a cool-down. First we start with the cross-arm stretch. You guessed it, push-ups. Liver shot. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I have Kickbox Fitness. It's at 9 a.m., which for me is perfect because it gives me time to wake up, have coffee, become conscious. I'm always in a fasted state still in the morning, so for some reason that gives me just endless energy. I run out of muscle energy. I have like nerd muscles, but as far as just breathing and running out of breath and just some kind of energy just builds up the more I work out during the morning workout. If I try to have breakfast and then go, forget it. I get super tired. Anyway, I better get going. I'm super lazy when it comes to cooking. I really don't like shopping. Sometimes I don't even necessarily like the thought of eating, like chewing stuff. But this is one of the main things that's helped me get over my fatigue. I just kept looking up what food gives you energy, what food keeps you from getting sick. Every single time it's like leafy greens. Eat your leafy greens and nothing will ever go wrong. I could just put it in a bowl. I always hear you're supposed to put 5 cups of lettuce. How do you measure cups of lettuce? I mean, there's a lot of surface area. I finally realized that just kind of means 5 handfuls. The purple kind are really good for you. They taste bitter. That means they're better for you. I have this weird thing where if something tastes not that great, but if I know it's healthy, I'll train myself that I like it. My favorite part is crumbled goat cheese. This is my favorite brand at the time, but it's the best part. It's really the best part. I suffered trying to find a salad dressing that didn't have the bad oils. All good stuff. Wait for it. There she is. Austin Biotec helped me shrink down what vitamins I was taking, what supplements. I had a huge stack because I hear about things, I learn, I do all this research and then decide I have to have it. So I basically try everything, and then by the time I'm taking it for a while, I forget what it was for. So now that I'm eating so healthy, I can see how I don't really need it all. And this was the one thing they added. So that's it. That's all I have to take now. It's great. Thank you, Austin Biotec.
They're gonna put the marrow there and they're gonna centrifuge it.
And that's what they're gonna inject. We got your racetrack, 12 levels, people up on the roof. We're at this crazy park.
Oh my God, I'm gonna drive myself to drink watching that. So Zach's lucky to have gotten a patient who's autistic, I have to say, because we don't mind oversharing. But yeah, I can't do all that whole emotional stuff. But anyways, you can see it's been a very fun longevity quest so far that I've embarked on. So basically, I got an autologous stem cell procedure called Rejuvacyte through Austin Biotec. And I'm going to tell you all about that. So like the purpose of the procedure is to boost our fertility by reinvigorating our reproductive system. And it was quite a fluke of fate how I saw this in the first place. Speaking of oversharing, the first female cycle I ever missed in my entire life was February 2024 when I was 55. And actually, that was the only month I missed last year. So it was just a total fluke. So the timing was crazy because that very same month I saw that the upcoming Church of Perpetual Life live stream was Zack Varkaris talking about his research on reversing menopause. So what are the chances? So I hadn't had any other obvious signs of menopause, but missing a period was emotionally shocking to me. So I made sure to watch that live stream. because I hadn't had any symptoms whatsoever up to that point. So what made me feel comfortable and subsequently jump on this opportunity was how Zack explained that it only uses stuff from our own bodies, stem cells from our own bone marrow, exosomes from our own blood, and it takes advantage of our own body's ability to heal and improve on its own. So we're just giving it a boost. So how? Well, by directly rejuvenating the ovaries. And when I say directly, I mean directly. March 11th this year, after the procedure, the surgeon showed a video of the needle gracefully entering my ovaries 2 times each. That was amazing to see. It was so cool that they had that available for me to watch. At first I was like, no thanks, I like dry things. But the surgeon talked me into it, and it was really worth watching, but more on that later. So why try boosting my fertility at my age? Well, it's multifaceted, and all of the women have their own personal reasons. So I should state that Austin Biotec simply helps us with fertility, and then we do with it what we will. So some women get this procedure for the obvious reason they want to conceive, and maybe they've gone through early menopause. So I'm very happy they're motivated, because the world needs more babies, not less. The best thing I ever did in my life was have a child, and raising her has been the most rewarding thing by far. So I had her at 44, which I personally thought was the perfect age. Like, I had never felt better. So some women do this for the aesthetic reasons, and we have obviously a more youthful appearance when we're fertile. I think a lot of people assume, oh, you don't look youthful because you're just older, but really it's that we're not fertile. So menopause accelerates collagen loss, and we lose bone density, hydration decreases, it's harder to keep muscle. And so being fertile is a key to remaining vital in general, especially for women. So Zack can hopefully talk about the male equivalent for all this, since the audience probably primarily male here. Instead of attacking all the separate problems like with various methods, like this protocol is more like a first principles approach, where we're getting to the root of the problem and allowing our bodies to just naturally recalibrate multiple systems at once. And here's another basic point, which I think most women aren't keenly aware of, that having the ability to have a child, just being fertile, helps women live longer, a lot longer. So once we lose our fertility, our bodies age more rapidly, and you can imagine the evolutionary reasons for that. So staving off menopause is also a longevity procedure, and that's my main overarching motivation. But let me start with my normal current timeline motivations for this. So being a mother of a 12-year-old, I want to live as long as possible to see what all she gets into during her life. And I also help take care of my mom, who has Parkinsonism, and I need to stay really fit so I can keep walking her safely. I like walk her like this. And also we all know caregiving can shave off a few years of our lives, even in the best circumstances, since it's just like tough watching our parents lose their autonomy. And there's one more key reason I wanted to do this, and that's because Dad had the exact same Parkinsonism symptoms in the exact same order as Mom. So I'm like watching it play out all over again. And I'm really doubling down now to make sure that my loved ones don't have to watch that happen to me. So anyway, so their situation also caused me to like reflect deeply on like how, like, why I talk so much about longevity, and I have a whole chapter about longevity in my book. And I was also always healthier than the average person probably, but I wasn't nearly as healthy as my true potential. So beyond those current timeline motivations, those of you who know me know I'm pretty eccentric, exceedingly curious, and like really driven to see like the far, far future. So since the early 90s, I've been a transhumanist-minded extropian version 2.5. Look that up. And I want to see the human race succeed and thrive. And I've always thought that longer, healthy lifespans lead to a much deeper human experience and intelligence. So my overarching motivation is to buy more time, more life, a lot more life. And that might mean that I repeat this procedure with Austin Biotec every few years in the hopes of reaching, wait for it, a longevity escape velocity. So as a proponent of super longevity, I really just want to show my deep appreciation for Zack's research and his motivation behind all this. So today I'll describe what that whole adventure has been like thus far, from the initial full consultation interview that they give and months-long baselining process that Austin Biotec coached me through, which was leading up to the procedure. And then how I then traveled to a swanky part of Mexico City for the procedure and what that whole experience was like. You saw a little bit of all this in the video. And there will be 9 months of follow-up and further screening, which is really comforting to know. So I just got one more blood panel repeated last week to see what changes may have occurred since the procedure. And I wish that the results were ready for today, because it'll be really interesting. No matter how that turns out, it'll be interesting. Now, mind you, I went into this prepared for like whatever the results might be. So even if there are no discernible effects, because as a woman of my age, weirdly hovering near the tipping point of menopause, so now I'm 56, I'll be 57 in June. I knew I'd be contributing to fertility science with my more like kind of rare situation. So the procedure I had was on March 11th, and there's been a bit of news since then that I'll mention at the end. So by now, this isn't a dry, impersonal walk-in procedure, like where you just wait for the date and then you show up, have the procedure, and then you're done. Nope, nothing like that. So Austin Biotec spends 3 solid months with us before we even have the procedure. So this is either in person or like we did over video calls, phone calls mostly. So that just depends on your location or like your preference or whatever. So these first 3 months are what they call health baselining period. So it begins with interviews, various emotional and health questionnaires, and screening to make sure we're a good candidate to begin with, and to make sure we don't have cancer or aren't currently pregnant, etc. And they also help us become like as healthy as we can reasonably be over the course of 3 months, so as to get the most out of the procedure, like get the most bang for your buck. And I'm sure Zack will talk about that, like his journey figuring that out, that he needed to do all this. And I imagine some women might not be quite healthy enough at the beginning, but maybe during the course of those months, it can improve and then be a good candidate. So they also put a big emphasis on emotional well-being. So, because, well, hormones. We all know stress can make us less fertile. I bet we've all, like, at least anecdotally heard of a couple who couldn't conceive for months or years and then like finally gave up. And then lo and behold, the woman gets pregnant simply because they're no longer stressing about it. So, and also a woman's emotional state matters so much just for health markers, just like blood pressure, sleeping, appetite, heart rate, etc. So beyond the questionnaires, they get a sense of who we are just by talking with us. So pretty quickly, after getting to know Zack, like over video calls, here's a little anecdote. Like, I think he didn't know what to make of me at first. Like he said, at one point, remember Zack? He said, "Let me guess, you're the kind of person who won't let anyone rearrange the furniture." Like, I'm too rigid. And I was like, we can't rearrange the furniture. It's drawn into the blueprints from 1965. It's not rearrangeable. Anyway, but hopefully Zach by now understands that I'm actually very emotionally stable. I'm not that rigid. I mean, I'm rigid, but I joke all the time, so maybe that makes up for it. Anyway, so it's been fun talking with Zach or Emma or Noreen, all these people, and although we try our best to stay on task, so, but it's always like a pleasure talking to them somehow. So at the beginning of the process, and then at repeated intervals, we have a very extensive blood panel, bone density scan, ultrasound, and other things depending on the person, I imagine. So they become very familiar with our current and ongoing state of health and well-being. You know, and they're always asking like, how are you? What's, you know, are you doing okay? Whatever. And so my doctor, actually, a very pragmatic doctor, she was amazed by the fancy blood panel order they requested. She was like, what is this? So I'm sure Zach can talk more about that later too. And also the crazy results. I'll let you talk about that, Zach. The crazy results I had with both labs, like last July versus this January. So more on that later. So Austin Biotec, they also make recommendations for diet, exercise, and other things accordingly and in good detail. So although we're not required to follow it all, it's very well thought out and customized for each individual candidate. So, and they have a wonderful lady I mentioned earlier, Noreen, who is a little older than I am and super fit and muscular. And she took me through that custom exercise plan that I showed in the video. And she just recently taught me some more like hip exercises. You know, and at first I'm like, oh, we already do these in my kickboxing class, but they don't, in kickboxing, we do more fast. So she's having me doing with like a rubber band and like holding it, like more muscle building kind of stuff. And then you just have to look at her. It's like, yeah, whatever you're doing, I should probably do, because she's like, you know, in her 60s already. Anyway, what else? So they go so far as to give us weekly recipes that fit our personal diet. And no, they're not all salads. That was me. So let me explain. So, so they give us recipes that fit our personal diet preferences. And I've been pescatarian since 1991 and like gluten sensitive since my mid 40s. So as you saw in the video, I'm very lazy about cooking. And while I did try out some of their menus, Alice and I tried out a few of them, I mainly added their ingredients, the ones I had been missing, to my salads. So you can put like almost anything on a salad, I discovered. Like, what can you not put on a salad? As long as it's grouped with other things that match with it. So in that video, you might think that like literally all I eat are salads, but there are days where I can't even think about leaves. And then I just go full keto usually. Or I might be craving carbs. I might be craving like just any carbs. And at that point, you know, women are different. Our hormones fluctuate in these waves, right? So since I eat so clean, I know that if I crave something, it probably means I actually need it. So I'll just go ahead and eat carbs. Like, you know, I'll get out my loaf of gluten-free bread, sad bread or whatever, or like I'll have potatoes or whatever. So Austin Biotec also helped me figure out the best salmon. I upgraded my eggs. I have like, so I saved so much money on supplements that I felt okay just buying best quality food now. So like everything's whole and organic, no labeled food. Like I didn't understand what that meant at first. It was like food with no labels. I was like, oh, yeah, I don't buy anything with labels on it necessarily. So I've really taken every single aspect up a notch since I've been working with them, because it's caused me to really like evaluate everything. My diet, exercise, learning to remain internally calm, like letting things roll off that I can't control. Because I still every now and then I'll have a meltdown. Like I am autistic. I will have a meltdown, but I know, I see it coming faster, and I'm much better at catching it and just be like, I can't control this. And even if I can control it, well, it's going to be a bullet point list of stuff I just need to do to fix it. So like, what is the stress? You just do what you need to do. I knew all that before, but it's like working with them and knowing, like, you know, and it is a bit of money and it is a bit of kind of pressure. So it's like caused me to really reevaluate everything like that. So, you know, now I'm just constantly counting my blessings or whatever. And I do feel more of a calmness. So, well, I used to enjoy the way I felt. Like my demeanor was always, let's just say since my middle school, high school, since puberty, mildly frustrated. That was just, if I was mildly frustrated, I knew everything was okay. And that was my normal state. And I could get a ton of work done because I would just sit in a chair and work. And then I would just do like super hardcore exercise 2 or 3, 4 times a week. Other than that, I'd be like working. So this is really getting me to, like, I know I'm going to live a lot longer, just learning how to get work done while I'm feeling great. I don't know if anyone can relate to any of this, but I'm like, I feel so great now. It's harder to sit still. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to get any work. So I'm like learning how to do all this. So rewinding a bit again to when we started. So I was already like very healthy when I began talking to Austin Biotec, but I had just gone through years of climbing out of a deep fatigue. And that involved everything from fixing my sleep to discovering intermittent fasting. That was the key, which meant morphing a bit more toward keto just to get the fasting rhythm going. And then doing some longer fasts and like nursing an injured shoulder. And then finally getting back into exercise. So this was like the few years before. There was a couple of years I was pretty healthy before I met Austin Biotec, but like leading up to this point to like 2022 was really kind of rough. So since then I was like tweaking my diet and supplements and always trying to maintain good sleep habits. Sleep's my biggest weakness. But so all of that process is exactly the kind of thing Austin Biotec could have helped speed along. Let's just say like my health would have improved much more rapidly had I known them a few years earlier. So they even have a grievance hotline where you can call and spill your guts and let your anger out. I personally haven't used it, but that's not really the kind of oversharing I like to do. But apparently a lot of the women love that feature. So, wow, I really wonder what those messages have been like over the year. I'd love to hear those. So at the end of the baselining period, we repeat the labs and make sure all is well. And it's important to note that some women improve so much during this inexpensive 3-month period to the point where they decide they don't even need the actual procedure yet. So, you know, they will at some point go through menopause, but it's always okay to come back, like delay that and come back when it's needed. So I just think that alone, like I have to say one of the reasons I was also like attracted to the company and just immediately thought, yeah, I want to sign up is because like Zack is the opposite of a salesman. And everyone around me here, they know that I kick salesmen off the doorstep. I'm just like, get out of here. And I won't buy solar panels unless it's the engineer that puts them on the roof. He's the only one I'll let in the house. Anyway, so Zack reminded me, I'm like, he's not selling this. He's just saying what it is. And I just, so, you know, trusted him. And, you know, part of that, like, you know, one example is that the baselining process doesn't cost that much, just blood panels or some money for the meetings or whatever. But if you get through that and then you improve your health, like it would even just be worth doing the baselining process if you just wanted to improve your health. But anyway, So we actually thought at first that that might be my situation. Like I was still fertile last July, and again, I'll let Zach explain those scientific details, but then I somehow like tanked in January. So I suspect the same thing happened to Mom as far as that goes. Because she also had like no menopausal symptoms. Her cycle just stopped in her mid-50s, and that was that. Like we're like an on-off switch somehow. So nevertheless, at this point in my life, I just so happen to be like right on the cusp of where aging starts to accelerate in females. But on the bright side, I'm 56. So like my mom, my fertile years have lasted like longer than average. And Zach can talk about how that fact alone has already bought us like over a decade extra. So let's see. So yeah, okay. So about the actual procedure, let's get to this. So to go into some more detail about the procedure, here, I'll read this. This is just straight from their website real quick. So Rejuvacyte is a one-day outpatient procedure. Autologous stem cells are extracted. Exosomes are added, and they're our own exosomes. And then stem cells are reapplied to the relevant reproductive organs, the ovaries. So the entire procedure is completed under 2 hours, and the patient is then free to leave the clinic. The patient does have to stay overnight in a hotel nearby, next door, as a precautionary measure. And then the following morning, the patient is free to go. And that's spot on exactly what happened. Right, so that was on their website. That's literally what happened, so very accurate. And then you saw us like goofing off at the end. So that was literally like the next morning. So the only reason it was kind of uncomfortable to walk around was because of mine was a mini laparoscopic. So there's like some gas they put in to make that work. And that was really the only reason that was a little uncomfortable, but the stitches, everything was fine. So yeah, the experience of going to Mexico was really cool. Like, okay, so we flew to Mexico, to a very nice area called Santa Fe, Mexico. Oh yeah, and it wasn't their fault, but the plane taking us to Houston was late, got canceled. Anyway, so there was like this big delay in the flight. We had to wait around. But they had a driver that was going to meet us, Arturo, and they just rearranged that like nothing. It was just like, oh, don't worry, he'll get you. Just show up when you show up. Like it was so casual. So we didn't really have to worry about the fact that our plane was late. We just took a later flight. It actually worked out because then there was no traffic. It would have been, it's horrific traffic during the day. So Arturo met us there with the most high-tech sign of the whole crowd of signs. So it was like really easy to find him. So I was like immediately impressed by his high-tech sign. And then we spoke like super broken Spanglish together on the way to the hotel. And like, he was just like a delight. So even like the driver was well chosen. And then it was comforting being in his car, and he gave us water after like the whole travel day. And then we ended up, because we were kind of frazzled. Because when we first got to the Mexico airport, we like ended up in the wrong line. We were like with the native Mexicans. And, I'm from southern New Mexico, so I didn't really notice. Instead of the like random European line we belonged in. There's a lot of funny things I could say about that. Anyway, so let's just say I was more comfortable in the Mexican line than I was when we got into the random Europeans line. So anyway, so we get to our swanky hotel. It's you saw it, full suite, same price as a normal hotel in the States. Amazing view, delicious food. I even got to hang out with some of the locals that you saw at the end that were like mutual outer space friends. So So like the next day, Zach walked me over to the very nice clinic, which is the building right next door. And the nice lady you saw towards the end of the video waving, she was with me a lot. And I could text her when I needed anything. And she was like the translator, although the doctor had perfectly good English, and I'm used to that accent. So, and the hospital was right across the street. We had a fun view of the helicopter pad out the window. And then like the operating room was like next level alien abduction. It was like super high tech looking. I mean, maybe they all look like that now. I don't know. I haven't been operated on. And they were all very friendly. The recovery room was like swanky. You saw that with the view. And I had something in my eye the whole time, so I couldn't really enjoy the view. But in theory, it would have been a great view. So then you saw they had my exosomes on hand. I think Zach took them there himself. And you watched my blood draw for that in the video. So they had arranged for the phlebotomist, and I didn't even feel the needle. So I don't know if that was a fluke of luck or if you guys are just really good at knowing that was a fluke. Anyway, I want to use her again. And then the day of the procedure, they extracted some stem cells so that, the next morning I went in there for the procedure. They get the stem cells out of my hip, used the centrifuge, injected them into my ovaries. I slept through the fit. I was under anesthesia, so I didn't, I blinked and it was over. And so, yeah, so like I said, mine was mini laparoscopic. That was just, I guess, because of my age and because of my panels from January. They're just like, let's do it the best way. And, but there's less invasive ways they can do this procedure. So I'm not going to have any scarring at all. It's almost like gone already. Like the entry points were very tiny. And then, yeah, the surgeon was like, you got to see the video. I wish we had that to show. It was crazy amazing. So he showed me that the surgeon had this video of the laparoscopic procedure. And yeah, it was, you could see every detail and he explained the whole thing. It was very impressive. So let's see what else. Like any hospital, they brought me Jell-O and apple juice, and then they quickly replaced it with sliced apples and tea. You guys are trying to kill me, but that was just hospital. So anyway, they were with me all the way, and we had a whole extra day to goof off after that and walked around all over the place, no problem. And Arturo got us back to the airport. So that was that. And so the procedure is, of course, on the pricey side, but not really. It's just being stem cell therapy and all. But this overall stem cell rejuvenation of our ovaries, can alone replace all sorts of other things that women spend their money on and time, for fertility, health, and aesthetics. So hormones, supplements, serums, and other procedures that can all add up to way more over the years. So, and this is just something you would do every few years. So if you spread the cost out, it's not expensive. And I'm not made out of money, so I'm a good example. I'll just rearrange my life however I need to if there's something I want. So for example, back in 2007 when I signed up for Alcor, I was only making $18,000 teaching part-time at college. So I just canceled my expensive cell phone plan and got a burner phone for a few years, until I had to have an iPhone. But, you can do these things. It's not rich people that do these things. So, and the payoff might be huge. So I might buy myself many additional years of life with this procedure. So while in the background, other breakthrough longevity sciences advance, during the time period. So for an unlimited lifespan, the idea is that our extended fertility years help us live long enough, we might catch that radical life extension breakthrough, and then, or many different ones we can get, and then reach longevity escape velocity. So then we can theoretically live as long as we want until we're like accidentally squished or something. So to be clear, no one's talking about literal immortality unless we become a cloud of pure energy or something. So even then, something could probably go wrong. But that's all in the future. So for now, I'm just still in this phase where I'm trying to buy more time, stay healthy and joyous, and hope for the best. So, like, my mom is 89 and my daughter is 12, and I'm somewhere in between. And I just want to note that, like, in the future, these ages aren't going to seem that far apart. So I'm just like born in the wrong century somehow. So in the spirit, I'm so glad to finally be contributing to advancing longevity science and fertility science. And since I'm not a scientist, I'm happy to be the subject. So, okay, before I close this out, let me tell you about what happened just 1 week into the, 1 week after the March 11th surgery. So I woke up on the 18th, feeling like a literal immortal superhero. It was very profound. So all day I was telling everyone that I felt like a superhuman. It was so like right after the surgery, and then a few days after the surgery, I'm just like, oh, I want the gas to go down from the laparoscopic procedure gas, and then I was a little tight, but so I wasn't really, but I felt fine, but just whatever normal like we would feel after that. But then a week later, it was something magical happened in my body, and I hope someone can explain it to me someday. So it was like more energy than I've ever felt. But I also had a nice, happy calmness about me at the same time. That was why it was so weird too. So all the energy in the world plus all the calmness in the world, I only ever felt that way, like maybe while I was pregnant. I had a very good pregnancy where the only downside was some brain fog. So that was crazy. So mind you, the superhero thing only really lasted 1 day, but overall I felt pretty good since then. And what happened on Superhero Day, as I call it, was that I got some spotting, after a full 5 days of spotting at where it was in the middle, it got a little heavier. It was like I was getting my cycle back, after 1 week. And it had been since December. So December all the way through a week after March, March 18th was nothing, right? And before that, it was a whole year of irregular, every month except February, but every month just irregular. So it was clearly on its way out. So it was like something magical happened in my body in just 1 week. So where my ovaries somehow signaled my entire body, get ready for youth again. It was very profound. So to be honest, I'm not sure if I'd want to feel that great every day. I'd probably never get any work done, but I think I've gone over everything. So, okay, that's all. And look forward to questions, comments.
Yes, thank you very much, Elaine, for that very thorough overview of your experience as a patient of the Rejuvacyte procedure. And Zack Varkaris is here to provide some additional details on the blood panels that were done and any other of the more technical aspects of the procedure that you would like to delve into. So Zack, please go ahead.
Thanks, Elaine. That was great. Just for the record, I'd not seen. That was the first time I saw that video. I didn't even know what was in it or anything like that. So that was an interesting moment, and it was very, very nice actually. That's cool. And there's Emma, there's Noreen, there's Deborah. There's a bunch of other people as well in the organization that are not being mentioned here that are very important. I think the the hugs routine is there's a lot of work that's gone into it, not just with Noreen, but also with Max McManus, who's current Olympic coach. Actually, he's very, very good, brilliant. And so we have a whole team behind that there. And then the other thing, of course, is the food side of things. I did notice you had those ready-made dressings. We never recommend ready-made dressings ever.
No,
ever.
but
So
you
that must
didn't.
have been
You missed
early
it.
days.
You missed it right after
Yeah, I
that.
saw the cap at the end. Yeah, I saw the cap at the end. Yeah, I saw that.
The dressings was before you gave me the recipe. I've been documenting this since the beginning.
Okay. Right. I just had a traumatic response with the like a no, but we have, and obviously we have as well Elaine Walker, who's the chef at Longevity, the Life Extension at the Church of Perpetual Life. She's working with us as well to create these menus. So we've had a much. I think one of the things that this shows is a much larger team than just me on the screen, and I think that's the thing that I think is very clear. And then, of course, the surgeons and that team, which is a phenomenal team. I mean, they really are. It's taken us a long time to find that team. And one of the things behind that is that those, especially Dr. Irvin, has a lot of personal interest in this area. And Dr. Ernesto, who actually hadn't met you, but he came straight in because on the surgery. And this is an interesting anecdote that after the procedure, we're all sitting around and talking, and I just and I knew he'd never met you, so he only knew that he had to come and do the one specialist part, although he's part of the team. So I said, how old do you think the patient is? How old do you think she is? I said, was it good? She said, yeah, man, great. 42, 43, just looking at the camera internally. And I said, no, she's 56. And went, whoa, which, by the way, in terms of fertility, is an exponential age increase. So it's a very interesting sign that these are things that we see and what can be done. But the thing is also, yeah, we did give you 90 days baselining, but you are fundamentally quite fit and healthy. And you're on the sort of fitter or healthier end of the spectrum that we have. And no one is precluded from this unless they have really life-threatening illnesses or there's something really significantly wrong with them. We can work with anyone, but it's just the results that you'll get will vary. And one of the things that we found with you was your blood work it was great blood work. You had fantastic blood work without going to significant numbers, but things like your FSH was 7.7, which is premenopausal, and then your estradiol was like 131. And then what happened was we were supposed to do it in December, but there was a delay, as you know, right? We had to change it, and that delay actually was very, very interesting because when we did the blood work again, your FSH, which is the follicle stimulating hormone that shows how active the follicles in the ovaries are. So the lower the number, the more follicles there are, because obviously the hormone attaches to the follicles. So as you start to reduce fertility, that number goes up. So it started at 7.7, which is premenopausal, and it went up to 88.3 in the space of 3 months, which is a huge leap, huge. So we were like, right, we've got to move immediately, which is menopausal, clearly menopausal. And your estradiol went from 131 to almost 0.5, which is almost dropping off a cliff. So this was like a significant moment whereby you had been perimenopausal. And to those in the audience who don't know the difference, perimenopausal means like half menopause, which means you don't have regular periods for a period of about a year at least. And you're classified as menopausal if you don't have a period for at least 12 months. So you're right on that cusp. And so we immediately, we rushed it forward. We were going to wait another month to wait for the other clinic to get back open again. We decided to go to the Palais at Santa Fe, right? So we went there instead. And so we could there. So unfortunately, the time to wait for the blood work to see what's going to happen, which will come through in the next 2 to 3 weeks, all things being included, as well as obviously the mitochondrial test, which is very important. And I'll come to that test in a minute. So fundamentally, we went in, we did the procedure, everything went fine, with the exception of, when you're very kind about that, because you drank some water in the morning, you couldn't. You had to wait 3 hours to do the procedure, or 3.5 hours, so that all the water cleared out of the system. So that by the time you came out of the procedure, it was sort of late afternoon, and an eyelash somehow. When you came to, by the way, you spoke to me in fluent Spanish. You didn't speak in English, yeah, which I thought was quite interesting. And then you were like, I was like, what, Spanish? What? And then the next thing was you had an eyelash that got in your eye, and it was, and I think also sometimes that can be back because of the sedative that's used. It can have a sort of, you get into like a loop feeling, and it makes it almost worse than it actually is. Because when I saw you later that evening at the hotel, and I gave you those eye drops, you were actually fine by the morning. So I don't think it was necessarily, it was almost like a psychological thing, rather than we were rearranging your furniture kind of thing, you know? And so it's that kind of thing there. And also the thing about the emotions that you brought up, it's not about the emotions are good or bad. It's about knowing how, what traits someone has and how to improve those response given the traits that people have in an environment. If, for instance, well, a person who likes precision, we're going to make sure that we explain things precisely, or we make sure that we these are the things that we adhere to, because that's the weakest link in your chain. If we mess that up, all the good work that we do, forget about it. That you'll just remember that one piece. And if it's someone else, it's all about being kumbaya and hold hands and all that, which we have people like that, then you have to kumbaya and hold hands, and that's what you have to do. And because you want to maximize the efficacy of the procedure, and it does have an effect on your body. I mean, we cannot quantify that. We don't have enough data yet to quantify that across the board, but we have enough to be able to maximize that procedure. And so that's where we were. And so HUGS is an acronym. It stands for hips, upper body, glutes, and shoulders. Originally, it was going to be core, hips, upper body, glutes, and shoulders, but CHUGS sounds like a bad frat party. So we decided to go to HUGS, and that was what we did. And yeah, it works very well. And I use it. I take a band with me wherever I go, because I'm traveling a lot now. And, and we use those bands, and we will be doing some filming of those, so we can have people that can go on to online classes afterwards if they want to, and again, you're right, Elaine, if everything works out really well with the fertility fitness, you don't need to go to the procedure. When you go when you have to go, and so that's exactly what it's about. Yeah, so that's an overview. I don't know if there's any questions. I need to grab a glass of water. Can I go on pause, and over to you, Gennady.
Yes, Zach, please feel free. And when you return, Jose Cordero does have a question for you, and we will get into the more detailed scientific discussion of the treatment as well. But in the meantime, I'll highlight some audience comments. So Rudy Hoffman writes that he likes how Elaine has the overlapping values of transhumanism, cryonics, health extension, and continual growth. So thank you very much for that comment, Rudy. And Josh Universe writes that from having talked with Elaine and seen her on the Salon today, she is extremely authentic and vibrant. So thank you, Josh. And Josh also writes that you should post the meals in his biohacker forums when you join his server. So Josh has biohacker forums that he is administering, and he is trying to grow the community of longevity enthusiasts there. He also says he loves the music that you have composed, Elaine. So a lot of good words from Josh, including about the video. He says 10 out of 10, absolute cinema. So thank you for that. And Zach is back. So now, Jose, please go ahead and ask your question, and we will have the scientific conversation.
Well, first of all, congratulations. Elaine. Beautiful explanation and nice video. Pictures of Mexico.
Thank you.
I lived in Mexico for 2 years, so I liked it. And also,
I love Mexico.
Zack, yes, Zack, excellent quick discussion. I have 2 questions for both of you or whoever wants to answer. One is about money. It was not mentioned about the cost. I would like to know how much was the cost of this therapy, number one. Number two, about the place. Of course, I mentioned I love Mexico, and some therapies are being carried out in Mexico. But as you probably know, Brian Johnson did some gene therapy in Honduras. Mel Gibson, some stem cell therapy in Panama. Liz Parrish did her original gene therapies in Bogota, Colombia. So my question is, why Mexico? And if you are considering other places, and if there are advantages and disadvantages in Mexico, Colombia, Panama, Honduras, whatever. That I imagine is for Zack. And thank you and congratulations on your work.
Thank you. Gracias, Jose. Can I answer I'll answer all the questions. I'll just go through the money bit first, and then I'll go straight on to the other reasons for the locations. For the money bit, everything from A to Z, all of it, is around about $20,000 all in. But it's broken down into little compartments. So the fertility fitness part is around about $1,500. The exosome part, which is a bit of an issue for us because we have to outsource that at the moment, and there's a reason we outsource it, partly for scientific, partly for logistical reasons, and partly due to economies of scale. We would love to do it in-house, but we can't because it would be way too expensive for us to do it. We'd have to have 4 times as many patients go through, and that's about $2,000 in itself, which is a big expense. And then the other area is the procedure itself and the 9 months aftercare, which is, obviously quite, as you know, Elaine, you've been dealing with Noreen and Angel and all that stuff. So that carries on. So that's the whole procedure itself from A to Z. We haven't priced in boosters, which would come in at the end of the 3-year period. But there is the thing with Elaine where Dr. Ernesto has asked her, and hopefully she will agree to this, after 110 days to come back to Mexico for a day, for us to do the ultrasound, the scanning ourselves, because it's an art form doing the scanning. It really is. It's almost like a paintbrush. And so we would like to be able to see how much the follicles have increased by. And at that moment, and I'm putting this on camera, I don't know if I should do this, but we've discussed this, but at that moment, depending on the scenario and the results, we might administer a booster. But that's something we have to discuss as and when, because it's 110 days or 100 days from now, whatever it's going to be. So it's still a bit of time, but we'll have the results by that point. So that's basically the cost. And we envisage that every 2 years, 2.5 years, you would do another booster again. But it wouldn't be for that price. It would be less. It wouldn't be as involved. And also, the other thing that we're really noticing is that the hugs and the lifestyle, the exercise and diet, even for someone as fit and healthy as Elaine, and the Freudenspanne, which is something that we've touched upon way back in the day that we've come up with, that is really, it really does make a difference. I mean, without going into personal details about what Elaine's going, she has some personal issues that she's been dealing with throughout this whole procedure, and it's still coming up now. And as she pointed out on the screen, that it's keeping us centered and being sort of bahala na, as they say in the Philippines, or que sera sera, as you would say, Jose. What will be, and that is very important because this is an element that people in what we call, well, technically middle age is 35 in the old school, but in the new school, middle age is 55, 60 even now. So middle age is that you're looking up those older than you and bringing up those younger than you, whether they're your children or your cousins or your nephew, whatever they are. You're in the middle, right? You're getting sandwiched. And so that is the reality of our lives from the 30s to our 70s. And that's the period that if you can't manage that period correctly, your genetic decline in your 80s is going to be rapid, as opposed to sort of a steady glide down of 30 years, which I know, the death of death and all that stuff. We're talking about getting to the point where you can have the death of death. We're like preparing people for that, So that's it there. So that's the cost side. The thing is, it varies per patient as well. Because some people need less work at the beginning, some people need more work. As a view, for obviously more work costs more money. But from us, and internally as an organization, those that need less work are generally better, because usually that means they're self-motivated. That's what it means. Not always, but generally. And also the procedure itself, as Elaine pointed out, we did a mini laparoscopy on her, which is 2 keyhole cuts, one just in the belly button, and one that's about half a centimeter in just on the bikini line. And what happens, everything else is done with like almost puncture needles. So it's not even, it's like a very thin needle. It's a very unusual way of doing it, or way, should we say, it's a very skilled way of doing it. And it comes to your next question, I say, why we chose Mexico, and I'll explain in a second. So this is very, very important, because obviously you don't want to be guard up. You want to maximize the efficiency. Now, the other way it can be done is something called a hysteroscopy, which goes through the cervix, through the vagina and the cervix. There's no cuts, but you have to have a very flexible endoscope that goes through. And there are many more areas it's more complicated. Although it appears on the surface to be less invasive, it can have a lot of issues if there are any places whereby the scope could be stopped, which means then you can't deliver it straight to source. So we don't just inject within the ovaries, we also do injections in other areas, the uterus and other parts of that part of the body, because the hormones are generated 65% approximately from that area and 35% approximately from the adrenal glands and the adrenal area. So with menopause, 65% of the endogenous hormones are taken away. But it isn't just from the ovary, it's also from the uterus and that whole area itself. So depending, we have to obviously work with different patients in different ways. So we have a flexibility of how we apply these techniques. Another patient that went through previously, we had to just go only into the uterus. We couldn't go anywhere else due to certain other issues, but that was for a different reason. And so therefore, we want to maximize the efficacy and effect for each individual patient. And this is something that we could even do if we had this across 50 clinics around the world, because we've already building that into our operating procedure and how we do this. So this is part of it. It's like, this is the ethos of what we're about. So that's number 2. So why Mexico? Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, yeah, I know about Johnson and Gibson and Honduras and Panama, etc. Bogota. We thought about Colombia. I know Colombia very well. In fact, actually, that was one of my primary choices. Another one was actually Peru, because again, I have a lot of connections, or we have a lot of connections in the organization in Peru. Originally, we wanted to do it in America because it was autologous, right? And we did a couple of IRBs, and they were not approved, or should we say they were rejected due to the fact that you can't use exosomes with mesenchymal stem cells. Well, that's actually not true. Not all exosomes are equal. But the reality is, without besmirching those that looked at the IRB, they just didn't know enough. That's just the reality. And so there was at the University of Chicago, Professor Al-Hendi and his team, who've been working with exosomes. There's some very good papers there working it, which is great. So, okay, we can do it in the US. But there's 2 issues that come about, 3 actually, 2 major ones. The first one is the cost is just going to be at least 3 times the price. At least the same procedure, at least 3 times the price. So the fact is, just flying to a destination and spending a night in the hotel, that suite, isn't it? It's $100 a night, it's like Motel 6, anywhere else. And here you're getting a suite. So the cost of just flying somewhere for 3 days out of 5 days, having even a holiday, would at the top end, taking a partner or family member, would be $2,000, maybe top end if you did everything. Whereas it would be an extra $30,000, $40,000 to do it in the US, which doesn't make sense. Number one, that's a huge issue, because then it doesn't become economically viable to amortize that over. People won't value that as for their health. It's too expensive for them, for most people. And this is not just about the rich people, as Elaine says. This is about those of us who work for a living, who have done a lot of the good stuff. We don't have yachts and mansions. We just have a house and we have children and we just paying our bills, right? This is what this is about. So the top 30% or whatever the number is, and what the number is. That's the first reason. The second reason is that the surgeries that we're using are actually come from the best surgeries. Originally came from Spain, of all places, actually, Jose. And so originally the PRP came from Greece and Svakianotis and all the Crete, which is where I come from, and that's where I discovered it a few years ago. And something else called the mosaic smash technology, where they took an egg and they took another egg and they broke up the genetic material and they applied it into the egg. It was in Seville, in Spain, and the procedure itself didn't work, but the technique of surgical application was brilliant. And all of our surgeons trained in Seville. That's the main reason. So what we've done is we've taken existing technology and the best surgeons we could find. This is not me saying that there are no OBGYNs that can do this in the US. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we had a surgeon technique with fantastic premises, people who understood what we were doing, who had a personal reason to make this happen. We could get them on the screen, by the way, if we want to, and we can go full on Spanish with them if you like. But they are fantastic surgeons and they understand what this is about. And having done thousands of procedures already, they could improve on our science, and we designed the plane, and they're the test pilots are now improving that plane, making it much better. And that's what they've been doing. So that's why Mexico, when you go to, and no one, by the way, in any of the clinics that you've talk about stem cell rejuvenation for the fertility organs in the way that they do. Everything that has been done so far, and now obviously it's changing, but everything that's been done so far in stem cells has been about what I call the band-aid, or dendrical organs, joint, spine, etc., etc. So yes, the original clinic that we're working with in Mexico worked with sports injuries. They worked with just like your friends in Honduras or Panama, right? The same kind of level. But what we're bringing to them is something that no one's done before, which is understanding how to reinvigorate the fertility organs to keep you youthful. Because it's not very, how can I put it? You do it, but it's not like having Botox where you come in like this and then you're like that and you can see it the next immediately. You can't do that with what we're doing. It's a slow burn. But hey, we're in the longevity game. So this is what it's about. It's about the long term. So that's why we chose Mexico City, and we have 2 clinics that we are working with in Mexico, but this one arguably is the better one. It's just a bigger organization, and we're actually growing the organization internally with our own members of our team, and we're merging together in that because it's a phenomenal team, as you saw, Elaine. You saw what we're about. So that's why Mexico. Are we thinking of any other locations? Well, the answer is yes. We have a location that is actually going to be opening realistically by the end of this year. We already got the site lined up and the surgeons lined up in the Philippines. Well, maybe the Philippines, actually. It might be in Malaysia, but probably the Philippines. Because, again, there's no point having people who are going to have this procedure flying from Japan or Korea, which are the two fastest aging populations in the world, and have the financial capability to pay for it. Why not fly 2 hours to Manila or 2.5 hours to Kuala Lumpur, and as opposed to a 15-hour flight across the Pacific to Mexico City? That's the reason. But Colombia is even further away because, as you know, it sort of goes out westwards like that. So that's the reason. We have another site that will be opening in East Asia. That will be opening by the end of this year and be ready to take patients by January, February of 2026, right? So that's for that side. From the Western Hemisphere, we have this main clinic in Mexico City. We have a secondary one in Tijuana, which is there as well, but again, cannot cope with the volume that this one can do. And then we are looking at other areas. We do have a retreat, by the way, which you'll find very interesting, in the Sacred Valley in Peru. We have a little retreat that we're going to put together. Well, one of our members is from Peru and has a retreat there in the sort of going towards Machu Picchu, and we can do a retreat there for the Freudian and the health and wellness. But in terms of the surgical procedure, we're just going to stick with what we know at the moment. And also we can teach the surgeons. So surgeons have approached us already asking us how we do this. And we are going to we have a school setting it up. We're already doing this, where we will be bringing them on board so they can come and learn the technique of how we do it. And again, a lot of what we do is very standard technology. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. What is exotic about this is how we apply the material to each patient as and when. And so it's almost how we do that. So think of it like a Coca-Cola recipe as opposed to Pepsi Cola or something like that. So that's that. I think, has that answered your question?
Yes, very well. Thank you. Thank you so much. And again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Jose, and thank you, Zack, for that answer. And now I would like to invite Aubrey de Grey to ask any questions of Zack and or Elaine about the procedure, any of the science behind it, anything you'd like.
Well, thank you, Gennady. So I've been listening with great interest to what Elaine and Zack had to say. Honestly, I'm not sure I do have many questions. I mean, remember, of course, I'm sorry for the movement. Here we go. Remember, I'm a PhD, not an MD, so I'm not really the right person to be asking the most pointed questions, if you like. But certainly everything that Elaine has described about the experience and indeed about the, the motivation and all that was extremely heartening. Elaine, I want to congratulate you not only on having gone forward with this, but on how you presented your experience today. And obviously, Zack, well, as Zack said in the chat, is here really as in a supporting role, if you like. And so, yeah, I mean, I am really quite impressed with what Zack has put together as a package for people like Elaine. I honestly don't have all that many questions. I guess one question I do have for Elaine, though, is to what extent are you working to promote this more widely? I mean, this is, of course, this Salon is, of course, one good place to do that, but you're kind of, preaching to the choir here. So are you perhaps in a position to have influence elsewhere, including, secondhand influence?
I could be doing a lot more promotion. So yeah, and I want to take any advice. So basically, I have I'm old, so I have a Facebook with 5,000 friends. I have, I'm on all the other platforms. I'm so busy doing like my own work, and then, doing the documentary video, like just even trying to get those pieces. I don't always feel like filming myself. It's kind of tough, but there's so many ways I could be promoting this. Like, I do have a YouTube channel. You can get to all this from my home website, ziaspace.com. So I have a longevity list already. So I've been meaning to add to that and then try to promote this more. And like, I should be getting on more kind of Discord and like, Josh Universe's groups he presented last week. I haven't had any time last week, but I want to go through that and see what can I realistically do. I used to be on like, way long ago on the extropian lists and other lists. And, even like the microtonal music lists, I just don't keep up. It all goes so fast. There's so much talking and I'm like, I gotta get to work.
To be clear, I think that all of us have the capacity to speak to both our own audiences and to the perhaps much larger audiences of people we know. And we need to do both of those things. Everyone who is closely connected to someone with a really large audience can probably make more of a difference via that person or those people than they can on their own.
So you think it's more important to do
it depends who you know.
Social networking, or is it more important to make a video production and then promote it, or to talk at conferences, or all of the above?
All of the above, but each of us have different potential for each of those. So, some people get invited to give a lot of to speak to a lot of conferences, like me, and to do a lot of interviews. And some people know the right people. It just depends.
And I do like doing interviews. I do like the question answer thing, because then you don't even have to prepare that much. You're just getting interviewed. I always like that. So anyone who wants to interview me, like for Alcor, I do that a lot. Like anytime they have a news channel call them up and say, do you have a spokesperson? That I'm usually like the go-to lady, or if there's some documentary, I'll do it.
So anyway, that's really all I had. I just want to repeat what I just said about, you really gave a great, account of your own experience and your motivations. And Zack very much complimented that very well. Thank you, Zack. So, congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Aubrey. And I think that was a great exchange. Now we will go to our other panelists, Art Ramon and Zach Richardson, to see if they have any questions for Zack and or Elaine. And then we will have another segment with Elaine sharing her thoughts on space exploration and some implications for fertility and reproduction in a space context. So Art Ramon, please go ahead.
Yeah, I had some questions along the lines of, say, menopause occurring possibly because of the grandmother effect, where maybe pheromone communication between the mother is creating let's say from the daughter. Okay, let's say Elaine's daughter, now that her pheromones are maybe pushing her into menopause, or maybe even sons also. Is it possible that your own offspring, their hormones start to cause, the menopause as a non-competition? Because they say that's one of the reasons, for menopause and growing older. So just any thoughts along that? Is it something that could be explored? This hormonal communication.
Yeah, I'm going to be careful about this one. That's a sort of nuclear bomb question that could be hours of discussion with going around in circles. Because the theory about what you're talking about with the environment and resources and all that, without meaning to sound too, I think it's a load of BS, actually. I just, because we're the only species, with primate species for sure, that has menopause, and no other species do except marine mammals. that do that. So why is that? So it's not even, there's not a correlation between intelligence or size, or there's too many weird variabilities. My theory is that, see, everyone thinks that nature's planned. I think nature's the optimum compromise, to quote my friend Walter. It's the ultimate compromise. So in other words, if you're alive at the end of the day, you're winning. That's all that matters, that's all that cares. So that fundamentally, that there may be, it just accidentally happened that way at some point and it stayed there. We're speaking there like in terms of like having menopause. I don't think is created that way. I think that there is basically a system where it's a very heavy energy wise, which is why you measure mitochondria. It's very heavy measurement wise on the system, so that basically if they can shed those energies, it means they live longer. So think of it this way: if we're fertile at 15, we can reproduce at 15. At 15, you have a child. At 30, your child has a child. You're a grandmother at 30. At 45, you're a great-grandmother. Average menopause is 50, and you last another 7 years. So you're basically living 2.5 to 3 generations. That's enough. But what's happened is society and biology are not combined. So in other words, our society has gone that now you're 15, you're a child. In fact, actually, arguably, you don't finish your education until you're at least 25, maybe even 30, and then you do your apprenticeship. And so basically, you have the window for fertility. Before was, we had a whole generation, 15 to 35. Now it's like you start thinking about having children in your late 20s, right? Not everyone, but I'm saying generally, right? Within a certain group. And therefore, we think that therefore applying modern day knowledge onto what is arguably prehistoric biology, and that means that can't be, we're not comparing apples with apples. I think that fundamentally we can just extend menopause for the moment, and that's the best way we can do it. And I don't think that's caused by the hormones of a child or the hormones of a parent, although the emotional response that you may have could exacerbate that and speed it up. I don't think it's a fundamental cause of it. That's the quickest answer I can give you.
I think, just to put my 2 cents, I'm not sure I even fully understood the question, but I think the reason I got my menopause, the main reason at like 56 is because, well, my mother also did, and she led a quite different lifestyle than I did. Like, although she grew up on a farm, so the beginning of it was great, but she probably hardly exercised a day in her life. She didn't really put an emphasis on exercise, let's just say. She was a mathematician and had a lot of exposure to toxins, I think is what led to the Parkinsonism. But, so she had a different life than I did, but we both got menopause at the exact same time. We both had no symptoms, and then boom, on off switch. So I think it must be genetic, I guess. I'm guessing. Also, same thing with when we first went through puberty, all of us were very late. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that discussion. I am sure that, as Zack said, an extensive amount of time can be devoted to that question or the implications of that question. For now, I want to see if Zach Richardson has a question for Zach and/or Elaine.
Hi, my question's for Elaine. I'm simply wondering if you've noticed any effects on your libido, or how that has interfered in any way, or if that's brought anything back, or or otherwise how it's affected you psychologically rather than just physically in terms of energy, etc.
Yeah, libido. Yeah. I've never been a strong libido person. I maybe, yeah, I think maybe. So there's something that's like, let me go into oversharing mode. Kind of like every month when you have your cycle as a female, you feel like this churning, some kind of churning going on. And I'm kind of forgotten about that. Like this, I do feel like something's churning. So yeah, probably. Yeah. It's been soon. Like Zach said, don't even worry about it for a while. It'll be at least a month or however long you said to wait for any results. But I do feel results as far as down there, like feelings. Yeah, I think
really
it's
cool.
working. We'll see if my hair
Can I
improves.
ask a bit more directly? Can I ask a bit more directly on that? So you're saying that you've had no improvement or no increase in libido, or you have had some increase in libido? Let's just.
That's like the borderline of my oversharing. Yeah, let's just say a little tiny.
That's all you need to do. That's good enough, I think.
Okay, so we have an interesting comment in the chat from Jason Geringer, who writes, "Children both make you age and also give you the will to live." And he is someone who had children when he was younger. He has a granddaughter now, I believe, and he is in his early 50s. But that is an interesting observation. So perhaps, at least according to Jason, there is a certain biological toll that being a parent takes, but there might be some motivational impact that keeps people going longer. Looking at data for supercentenarians, as far as I'm aware, whether or not they had children has had no correlation with their longevity. In recent years, the oldest living individual was a woman named Lucille Andon, or Sister Andre, who was a nun for the vast majority of her life. But there were also women who had one child or multiple children who made it into the supercentenarian category. Jean Calment, the oldest woman on record, had one daughter, at least as far as we know. So there's not a clear correlation between whether or not one has kids and longevity according to the empirical data. Now, speaking of empirical data, this is a question I wanted to ask prospectively for Zach and Elaine, if you know this. What is the approximate time frame of results? Like, you have a blood panel that you did that hopefully will show some results soon. What about future results and major metrics that you're looking at to see how effective the procedure was?
I'm sorry. Oh, can I answer the question about kids and moms?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry. So I'm probably a bad example of that because Alice is actually like my special interest. Like, I'm sure of it. Everything stresses me out except having a baby, being pregnant, even the idea of it, and then raising her, and even her friends, crazy parties. We had 1,000 crazy kids parties here. Everything stresses me out except raising my child and like kids and stuff. But it's like balanced out with, I knew it would happen, like taking care of mom, so yeah. Definitely caregiving is aging, but raising my child, everything about it, even the stressful times, I'm sure it makes me younger. Even just like her going to Taekwondo and then, okay, I'm getting into it. I'm gonna go do grappling now because you're doing Taekwondo. Like, there's just so many examples of how she makes me younger. But yeah, I think I only have one kid too, so I can focus on her. So I could see, like, if people have kids younger age and they have multiple kids, I can see how that might age you. And I think in the future, when we have super long lives, that's another reason to really get a handle on, like, to make fertility more of a prominent issue for women to even be aware of. Because if they can get their whole entire career in order, I did a lot of things before I had a kid. I still feel like I haven't accomplished nearly enough in life, but I did a lot of stuff before I had a kid. So I knew who I was. I was just super excited to have a kid in my 40s and comfortable with myself. So I think people could wait a lot longer to have kids and be happier. We do need to have 2.1 kids. I only had one. I feel a little guilty about that. But yeah, one is probably the right number for me because I can really focus. Anyway, so yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for that answer, Elaine. And any comments on future results or what you're expecting, what is going to be measured, and what would be some indicators of how well the procedure has worked in the long term?
No, that's great. That's perfect. Thanks for that, Elaine. So no, that's great. This is one of the reasons why I'm glad we did this before we got to the set of results, partly because I think we so focus, and don't take this the wrong way, guys, on the male quantification aspects about what the results are, without actually understanding it's about also the whole environment itself. So I think that's one of the main reasons why this is what we are talking about here. It are results already, more energy, the feeling of superhuman, the fact that actually I don't want to feel superhuman all the time, because if I do, then I'll get nothing done, because everything's a huge dopamine release, so you don't get anything done. In fact, it's very clear, and those of us who've done writing, who've done research, your best optimum sort of productivity is just slightly below average, a little bit down, so it just keeps you focused and balanced. So there's a lot of reasons like this that we tend to overlook. So in terms of the results that we're looking for, this is one of them right now, right? So that's number one. Obviously, we're doing the standard, the estradiol increase, the progesterone, the FSH decrease, standard methodology of the hormonal panels, which is based on clear research already done by our Professor Al-Hendi, and stuff that we've done before, actually, as well. So that's the thing we'll be looking at. Not only, though, the results that we have now, how long those results last for. How long is it before the uptake happens? How long does the uptake happen for? And then when does it drop off? And that's very, very important, because this is not science experiment in a lab. This is a living experiment of like for our lives, right? For how this affects the people around you. So if we know that the results we're looking for is not necessarily absolute numbers, but how long they last for and what the efficacy and when it drops off, that will allow us to tailor the procedure accordingly and to improve it as we go along. That's number one. But in terms of the measurements and the metrics, coming back to your hardcore science, Gennady, right? Let's get masculine on it. So we're going to talk about hormone balance, estradiol. We're talking about progesterone. And also this type of estradiol. Remember, that's different, because endogenous hormones are far more efficacious, right? You need less of them, and they don't have issues with, artificial hormones have issues with other areas that we're not going to get into now, but they have issues with other problems. Bone density, huge issue. Now that takes a while to do. You've got to wait 6 months to really see if there's been an increase. We'll take the measurements, but it takes at least 3 months to see results. The increased in follicles in the ovaries, which is why hopefully Elaine will come back for another jolly to Mexico City and have the scan done of the actual follicles and how they've improved, and also within each individual ovary, because what we've done is we've taken each ovary and slightly variated each one, so to see the difference of what that variation will be within the same organism, Elaine. But anyway, so that's there. The other thing we're looking at is energy levels, and we measure things like mitochondrial energy levels, which is very important. Basically, how efficiently your engine's running. Again, this takes a lot of time, right? Because it's like, from when you had your long COVID and you had your running, I couldn't do this, and then you changed your form and the running form, and suddenly you improved, and you're still improving. In fact, you're getting better and better and better. Now, was that because your mindset is right, or do you think that the realignment of your posture was the initial cause of moving everything else forward? I'm just saying that these are things that you can only see with the benefit of hindsight, So what we're looking for here is hormone balance, bone density, so all the effects of what the menopause causes, right? So hormone balance, bone density. We are looking at blood sugar, inflammation markers, skin, so elastin within the skin, and that's a measurement that I'm not going to talk about on camera now because it's still quite proprietary, but we're pretty up there with skin. And also the emotional health and well-being, which again is very qualitative, but it has quantitative results. So what we will do is once we have those results, first we have the blood work coming in now, which again, but I have no idea what they're going to be. I have no idea. Could be amazing, could be crap. I just don't know. We just don't know. But it doesn't mean that the bone density isn't good, which is 3 months down the line. It doesn't mean that Elaine's libido goes through the charts and stays like that forever and ever in a day. That's something else. So there are a number of different variabilities that we need to look at, which is why, you know, I'd be very coy about giving answers to that, because we don't always know the answer. We just know that there is improvement. It's how we can quantify it and then explain it to an audience in a way that they can understand that. So that's what we're going to be looking for with results. That sounds that's a bit messy answer, but that's.
You said measure mitochondrial energy, or you said measure energy levels at one point. Is there a masculine measure of that's data-based, or are you just talking about something more like how the person feels subjectively in terms of energy levels on a day-to-day basis? I ask because my current interest is sort of in mitochondria stuff. So how is that measured, or how are you measuring energy in any way, assuming you're measuring?
I see you've got a Blueprint T-shirt on, so you're obviously a Paul My Johnson fan. So therefore, that's there. It's like what you've got here is that fundamentally you're talking probably about morning wood, aren't you? That thing, right? So I think fine, but the fundamental thing here with energy is this. When you I know I'm on screen, but I don't care. So on this, what it is that when you have a child, when you conceive a child, it takes about 10 times more energy to conceive the child. For a woman to have the ability to carry that child, the bone density requirements, the blood flow requirements, brain fog is actually a byproduct, because women are much better natural communicators than men, but they speak more, right? They're just better at it, right? So we have to work harder to communicate, right? You know, when they say I'm fine, there's so many layers. And when the guy says I'm fine, he's fine. That's what it means, right? It's a very different dynamic. And so measuring that energy vis-a-vis fertility gives us a base point. Now, what we're measuring is the output of the byproduct of what's produced in the cell, of what's in the exhaust pipe. It's almost like a smog test kind of level. Now, with men, it's slightly different, similar but different, because where we produce our hormones is much more concentrated than women. So think of a woman like a tower computer, and you've got everything spaced out. You open the box, and you've got the motherboard here and the driver here, and everything. You can see it all, and you can, with the screwdriver, you can sort of fix most of it. With a man, it is all in the smallest cell phone you can imagine, and everything's all stuck in this tiny little bit like this, and it's far more fluid. We don't run on a 28-day cycle of lunar cycle. Men probably run on it's not about men here, but it's fundamentally it's about an 8-hour cycle. It's a solar cycle. It's a different cycle. We run on a different set. With men, the issue with mitochondria is we still need that energy to produce. Again, it's around sexual function and reproduction. So as you ejaculate, there's a lot of energy. That's why you might feel sleepy afterwards, right? So there's a lot of things like that. So I can take this offline with you because it will be a very long conversation, and I'd rather bring one of my other members in as well, who's more specialist, rather than talk about it now. Okay.
Yes, I think that would be.
I'd be fascinated to talk more, but just to clarify, I appreciate a lot the angle you're going on, focusing on women's health and stuff. And I was totally just making a joke, masculine is like data based or something. I wasn't asking specifically about men at all.
I'm not offended. I'm not offended at all.
Yeah,
I'm
no
just
one's
giving you grief for the
offended.
Blueprint T-shirt. That's all. That's all it is.
Yes.
Hey.
Yes, I think Zach was going off of some of the comments that Brian Johnson has made very prominently. But since we have a little less than 10 minutes in the salon, I wanted to give Elaine the opportunity to share some of her thoughts about space exploration and implications for fertility and reproduction in space, because one could imagine, especially given the conditions of space travel or the harsh conditions of settling other worlds, it would be fairly difficult to conceive and raise children in those environments. So, Elaine, please share with us what you were thinking on the subject.
Okay. Oh, and Zach, real quick before I forget, speaking of t-shirts, remember I told you I had a Roger Penrose shirt? Okay. So now I did one quick question about mitochondria. So my tests, I think my mitochondria test showed that when I'm sitting and working or just sitting, my mitochondria doesn't get oxygenated enough. But when I'm working out, like in that video where I was talking about, I seem just energy, that I have plenty of oxygen. My mitochondria works better when I'm working out. I'm not really sure if that's true, but if anyone's an expert on that.
You said something about measuring it or your tests, and that's something
a me screen test. It was called a me screen. I guess you could look it up, and it came in the mail.
Sure.
And then we pricked our finger, and that was a separate test I did that they had me do.
Okay.
And it was all about mitochondria. Is anyone an expert on that? Like, is it possible that I just need to learn how to breathe better when I'm sitting? Anyway, but that's okay. Zach can talk to me about that later. So, yeah, so regarding space travels, this is something that's kind of bothered me for decades. So I got interested in space travel. You know, everything happened right around 1991, and I was well into it, going to conferences and meeting people and activism by like the mid 90s. And people talk about sex in space and all that. Hardly anyone ever worries about fertility in space, and I don't understand it, because what are we going to do? Go to Mars and then just depopulate, like if it doesn't work? So this is with regards to, gravity and radiation. So first of all, I was sorry to miss the live chat for like Josh Universe's talk last Sunday, and I watched that in the evening. And I'll try to get on to some of those forums, and I'm sure there'll be forums for this on there as well. So, and it's great that Josh has created that whole web of communication for all these different important topics. So I just want to say, just talk a little about space travel, cryonics, Mars, longevity. You know, it was a lot of the topics that he said last week. And I'm just thinking, yeah, within terms of fertility, can we talk about those topics? So, I literally, let's see, let me think where to start with this. So just a little background. So I'm basically driven by curiosity, plain and simple, is the main driving force to spread life and humanity and have it thrive all through the universe. So we can understand where we came from and all that. And when I first came into these topics was when I got a computer, I got an Apple IIci computer, 25 megahertz in 1991, and got on all these news groups because that's all you could do. And I had never thought about anything except music before that, basically. And somehow I was super interested in all these topics, like futurism, transhumanism, cryonics. And cryonics was something that I thought at first, well, that's I seem to be interested suddenly in space travel. So surely we'll need to freeze ourselves to get to the nearest star or something. So that was my initial thought about cryonics. And then ended up on an Alcor news group. So I learned about that. But so as we, I've probably seen 1,000 talks on space, and I've looked up research to see what is there out there. And the only thing I could find, and I actually knew a guy that was that was working on the preliminary studies for this and the engineering and stuff for those studies where they put mice on the space station, and they had some of them in zero gravity and some of them in artificial gravity. And the results were that they couldn't tell the difference between these two situations, but it was too short of a time span to be able to tell if it meant anything. Like, really? Is that the only study? And then I think there's some studies on radiation and how that affects maybe fertility or eggs, but I'm not really aware of them. I've tried to look them up. So this is just something I want to just inject these thoughts into, you know, speaking of preaching to the choir, into the choir. I want to inject these thoughts. Can we always just think, is there any way to ever bring it up? Like, no matter what study you're doing or what conference you're at or who you're talking to, can we just like bring it up? Like, by the way, have there been enough studies on whether when we settle on Mars, are we going to need to, like, here's some of my thoughts. If radiation or, well, let's just start with, like, if the gravitation, you know, 1/3 gravity or whatever it is on Mars is not good enough, do we need to have a pregnancy orbiting facility? So then there's the question of, does artificial gravity even work? It's slightly different than regular gravity. There's something different about spinning than just acceleration type gravity in one direction. We don't even know if that's good enough for something as subtle as fertility, for egg health, fetuses, we don't know. Or if it's, you know, but maybe that would work. Maybe the women just go up to the station for 9 months. Maybe it'll take a different amount of time on Mars. We don't even know. What if it's radiation is the main problem? Well, do we need to go underground for a while? Or here's my thought on cryonics that I kind of wanted to run by like Josh or whoever, any cryonics expert. If we could like remove our eggs when we're at our most healthiest to get our best eggs. So, you know, this is for a Mars colony. Oh, you're at that age now. We got to get your eggs. Put it in a cryogenic facility. So I did some research. It's super rough, and an AI helped me, so you could totally tell. But the boring companies drill, and the Alcor doers are just small enough to fit inside the boring diameter. So just a thought, right? We could drill into the side of a mountain, because I did all this research. Where's the coldest part? Above ground, below ground, poles. Well, it seems best maybe just to drill into the side of a mountain where you got a lot of dirt, but you're still right there. You're not very underground, can't get to it. Have cryonics facility. So for cryonics, normal, but also for like just cryogenic preservation of eggs. Of course, you'd want organs and all that's another topic, blood. But can we freeze our eggs when we're young? And then we get to that age, oh, we got to do the in vitro or however it would work. Put it in the mother, go up to the spinning station. No one's ever talked about this. I mean, maybe they have. Please enlighten me if they have.
Yes.
Or, you know, there's zero G. There's like, if we'll be living on space stations probably. And then just one more quick thing. Like if we're going to other star systems, let's just say nearest star for now. Obviously, we could do things like Josh said, be preserved in some way on the way. I have always also pictured the people where that's just their whole life. They're just always born and raised, maybe die on the traveling space station, you know, the traveling ship we're just always almost like a religion. We're never going to get there because we're not going to live nearly that long. It'll be another 1,000 years before we get there. But like we live on this ship that's going to that star. So it doesn't always have to be so depressing, like they're going to be frozen along the way. You know, there might be a lifestyle we can have on some group of ships or some fleet or something like that. But even then, okay, maybe is there less radiation, or there's different types of radiation that happen when you're in deep space. So yeah, thoughts, and just literally just inject these topics into the various groups. There's a lot of overlap. Space, longevity, cryonics, fertility.
Yes, indeed.
That's a lot of conferences.
Absolutely. I think a lot more can be said on these topics, and you've already motivated some thoughts among our audience. Our producer, Bill Skywatcher, writes they should definitely have an orbiting facility for supplies and emergency assistance at the least. So thank you, Bill. And Josh Universe mentions that Kelly Girardi, a fellow member of IIAS, did a microgravity flight on VSS Unity and had a fertility study, but otherwise there has been very limited research on the subject. And one last comment from Josh in terms of artificial wombs and injection and using radiation-resistant materials in a setting where the G's, the gravitational force, would be closest to that of the Earth. So a lot of thoughts, but definitely this is an area that needs to be studied and explored far more. And unfortunately, we are out of time for our Virtual Enlightenment Salon today, but thank you, Elaine and Zack, for joining us and for all of the great discussion. You are definitely pioneers all, and as our friend Ham writes, Elaine is breaking the limits for other women. He feels the frame expanding, so thank you for that. And this is an example of how hopefully we can all live long and prosper.